Hello, this is Wendy, Carolyn's daughter. I would have liked to share these stories with you live, but I'm better able to tell them in a recording. This photo is a picture of the Long Mynd in England, a place where my mom took me. What can I say about our mom? She was amazing. We almost lost Mom in 1989, and after that, I promised myself I'd always do the dishes when she asked, and I'd never take time with her for granted again. She made my heart, so she knew my heart. This is what I know about our mom, Carolyn. She loved ice cream, and she knew all the best places for it. She loved long walks in the country in all seasons. She wrote poetry. She once wrote a poem called Ode to a Full Moon over the half-price store. She loved to play the piano. She loved the house filled with music. She loved drawing and painting. She carried a brush ink pen and a sketchbook with her everywhere she traveled. She kept the same brush ink pen until the ink was gone. She'd sit beneath a tree in the sun, using the pen to draw a river in the distance, a leaf, an iris, a butterfly wing. She'd sit in museums and sketch the statues of Greek mythology. She'd draw her children sleeping, a lonely man in a restaurant, boats on the water, a cat sleeping in the sunshine. She braided my hair, taught me to care for animals and plant a garden. She taught me about Muhammad Ali and Georgia O'Keeffe. She thought it was important to have a life's work. She wanted clean water for all, equal rights and equal pay. She wanted the right thing to be done. Instead of TV, she read books aloud to us, taking on the different voices of all the characters from To Kill a Mockingbird, The Martian Chronicles, Dandelion Wine, The Illustrated Man, The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings. She did the voices of Gollum, Frodo Baggins, Gandalf, and Scout Finch. The voices she read for each character were so realistic that, sitting next to her on the couch, we were swept away to other worlds. The voice she did for Gollum was incomparable. Just a few years ago, she and I went to the movies to see The Hobbit, and when Gollum first appeared on the screen and spoke, I turned to look at her in the darkness to find her riveted by the performance. And I was transported back to my childhood when I buried my face in her sweater to be comforted by her as she read in the terrifying voice of Gollum. She loved cartoons, little monsters, and silly faces. Once for my birthday, she bought me a fuzzy green hand puppet with big cartoon eyes that looked like Animal from the Muppet Show. I was thrilled she kept it in the glove box of her Pontiac Catalina so I could give surprise puppet shows to unsuspecting pedestrians as we drove down the street with the windows unrolled. When I first worked in clay, I sculpted all kinds of little aliens that looked like E.T. They had big eyes and long arms and pot bellies, and I'd fire them in the kiln and give them to her, and she'd line them up on her windowsill in the kitchen, like some people would do with fine crystal. She bought us each a pair of hiking boots in the 1980s. She wanted them to last us forever. So she bought a large tin of beeswax and showed us how to waterproof our boots as we sat at the kitchen table together on Fairfax Avenue. She hiked New Mexico, England, and the Colorado Trail in those boots. She wore them when she worked in the garden. She wore them to her parents' farm sale. She wore them all through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. She wore them on the beat reporting for small family farmers, and they were still sitting on her front porch last year. She found a way to make everything special. She was transparent and truthful. She'd lay it all out on the table. She was kind. She gave us the goods, all the information we'd need to make decisions so we wouldn't be confused, lost, or alone. If we work together, she'd say, we can help others and do something special. Being of service was important. We picked up litter at the Nebraska State Fair for 3 years. In exchange for our service, the State Fair granted us pineapple twist ice cream cones, a hot dog or hamburger, 3 rides on the Midway. Mom always took the Ferris wheel, and a concert of our choice. Mom loved Ray Charles. She took us to work on the Continental Divide above Timberline where there were no roads and the crew brought food in on llamas. In the mornings, we woke in our tents, frost on our eyelashes, and at the end of the day, we'd warm our boots by the fire. After working on the trail, she surprised us with tickets to see the Grateful Dead at Red Rocks, gifted to her for helping a small locally owned record store threatened by city developers. "I've never heard of this band," she said. "I wondered if you kids would like them. It sounds like a nice reward for us after working on the trail." She took us everywhere, and when she was honored with a teaching Fulbright in England, she sold the Pontiac Catalina, and we got on an airplane for the very first time in our lives. We went to Shakespeare plays and castles and walked the beaches of Wales, finding the first jellyfish we'd ever seen. We hiked the Long Mynd of Shropshire, in this photo you see, a high ground in England lying between the Stiper Stones and the Stretton Hills. There were sailplanes and gliders at the top, and she thought it might be good to see the view. And I watched her jettisoned off the Long Mynd in a sailplane to glide through the blue sky. Returning, she made a perfect landing, breathless, laughing, and exhilarated. We crossed the English Channel in a ferry during a storm, and were in Paris later that night with the Volkswagen Beetle she bought with money from the old Pontiac. We drove across the countryside, eating baguettes by the river and walking the beaches of Normandy. She took us to the mesas of New Mexico, to Shining Rock in Rio Arriba County, a site where thousands of Jurassic dinosaurs are fossilized in the canyons and the gorges. Here, she taught me how to know the golden hour by how the light hits the rocks and how to identify animal prints in the sands by the Rio del Yeso stream. She could see when you wanted to get somewhere but didn't know how. She could see when you needed to communicate but weren't sure. Here's a piano, a guitar, a paintbrush, a camera, new language, a set of pencils. She'd set the tools out and show you how they worked, and if your independence or aversion to change was greater than learning how to move forward, she'd wait, leaving the light on until you came home. She taught good communication is listening. On a sunny day this winter, I went to visit. Since the pandemic, our visits were limited. While it was cold, we usually met inside. But on this day, she indicated through sign language she wanted to go outside. She was in her electric power wheelchair. To keep her warm, Dave brought down her coat and his big fur hat and his large gloves. She wanted everything put on her. As soon as she was bundled up to where we could not even see her face, she pushed the forward button on the power chair, and out the front doors and into the winter sunshine she went, moving at high speed and singing. I thought I was dreaming. We hadn't heard her voice for so long, but on this cold, sunny winter day, her voice was back, singing the words to Jingle Bells, What Child Is This? Silent Night, Away in the Manger, Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing over the plains, and she was off through the doors and down the path, making it look effortless, moving through the parking lot, turning figure eights, and heading down the driveway towards the road. Having something to look forward to was the key to everything. I hear her voice in my heart every day. I see her in everything. I'm so grateful we had this time.